Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend. We had a bit of rain, thankfully, because we've really had a shortage of water here in Nairobi. Home, we haven't received water for about 6 weeks. We've been having to bus it in, which is not the optimal solution. Macro thoughts: Russia added 8.5 tons of gold in June, total now 1,717 tons, the highest gold to GDP ratio of any major nation. This is James Ricard's Putin Sees What's Coming. 22nd of May I wrote a piece, Apocalypse Trump, and I was talking about how if we are headed to an apocalypse Trump, then I'm afraid the dollar has a lot further to fall. Take a look at this chart from David Inglis. A little bit more of this, and the dollar falls through the 2016 low, taking us back 2.5 years. This is all about the political risk. It's difficult to read now. I can't work out whether Trump has enough tools in his toolbox to see this off or not. But it's certainly getting closer and closer. US crude oil futures settled at $45.77 a barrel. They're trading up about 10 cents. But Venezuela needs to be watched very carefully at this point in time. A lot of the surplus supply in the US system has been coming out of Venezuela. Home thoughts: I like this Jack Kerouac quote. I was halfway across America at the dividing line between the east of my youth and the west of my future. Saatchi Gallery, which really is an excellent place to visit in London if you're ever there, tweets, "My selfie and I, a forum on cultural effects of selfie mania." It's really a phenomenon, isn't it? Enjoyed this performance. Can't translate the opening lines due to my extremely limited knowledge of Pashto, but music has no language. Take a listen, really very good. Linkin Park, that was a very sad story, he's passed away. Saw this photograph that they released on July 21st. I like this painting by James Turrell. It's called Key Lime Pie. There you go. The only human alive or dead not contained within the frame of this photo is Michael Collins, the ultimate anti-selfie Apollo 11. And on that note, I'll put up a photograph of the moon landing. This was interesting. Surreal studies of Dubai's upper middle class. Take a look at the photographs of this. Nick Hannes's photos capture life as if it all happens in a parallel world where everybody is happy. Belgian photographer Nick Hannes has scooped the documentary prize at the Magnum and Lens Culture Awards. The 43-year-old series captures the culture of Dubai's elite and was the favorite of a panel that included Magnum photographers Alex Soff, David Hearn, and Susan Meiselas. Will go on show at the London's Photographers Gallery this year, along with the rest of the winners across the street portrait, photojournalism, open and fine art categories. There are fantastic photographs there. Have a look at this Hub Zero, Dubai, January 2017. Emirati boys playing a game of pool at Hub Zero. And then this, an immersive entertainment hub. That's an immersive entertainment hub. And then there are plenty of other photographs. Take a look at the one of the Russian ladies having a good time. And then I came across this story, trying the Hadza hunter-gatherer berry and porcupine diet. And this is about this tribe in Tanzania who are living apparently the most approximately to how we lived thousands and thousands of years ago, and talking about their diet, and really is an interesting article. Do take a lot. Political reflections. Let's start with these shots from Nyagatare. This is on President Kagame's campaign trail. The more I look at these photographs, and Kenya is no exception as well, it's become a real art form in projecting political strength. This is a good example as well. Of course, President Kagame is expected to win by a landslide. Africa Confidential saying the same thing. His victory next month is assured. Of greater interest is how he will achieve it and his policies towards the regional flashpoints. Lest there was any doubt about the outcome of the 4th August presidential election, President Paul Kagame dispelled it himself at a mass rally on 14th July. When official campaigning began, mocking foreign critics, he declared, "Some people have said that the result of the election is a foregone conclusion. They are not wrong. Rwandans made their position clear in 2015. He was referring to the referendum on changing the constitution to allow him a 3rd term in office. In none of the 7 popular votes since 2003 has the turnout fallen below 96%, or Kagame's personal vote fallen below 93%. The 2015 referendum clocked up a 98.3% yes vote on a turnout of 98.3%. There's a lot of debate about President Kagame, but what has to be said that in terms of execution, Rwanda punches far beyond its actual size, and I think that's down to him. And also, just a question of setting out a plan and keeping to it, and I think he does that remarkably well. China warns India not to harbour illusions in border standoff. China's defense ministry on Monday warned India not to harbour any illusions about the Chinese military's ability to defend its territory and a festering border dispute. The standoff on a plateau next to the mountainous Indian state of Sikkim, which borders China, has ratcheted up tension between the neighbours who share a 3,500-kilometre frontier, large parts of which are disputed. Shaking a mountain is easy, but shaking the People's Liberation Army is hard, ministry spokesman Wu Qian told a briefing, adding that its ability to defend China's territory and sovereignty had constantly strengthened. And I concluded by saying, China is supremely confident at this moment. Islands have been militarized, and now they are kicking butt from Repsol, who they kicked out of the Vietnamese waters, to Narendra Modi. M.K. Bhadrakumar, who writes, ex-Indian diplomat, writes in the Asia Times, always gives good insights, talks of Indian strategists failed to see that a new confrontation with China may not necessarily be a replay of the 1962 war. It could be far worse. In an editorial on Friday, the Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece Global Times wrote on the month-long military standoff between China and India in the China-Bhutan border region. If New Delhi remains stubborn, India should get prepared for all possibilities from a potentially grave escalation of tension. The PLA's mobility and logistics capability cannot be matched by that of its Indian counterpart. PLA troops may appear in any area beyond the line of actual control that was previously controlled by India. China does hold a lot of cards and can hit India's Achilles heel. The Achilles heel unmistakably refers to Jammu and Kashmir. An earlier Chinese commentary called the Ladakh region of Kashmir, currently controlled by India, disputed territory claimed by China, Pakistan and India. Such statements are unprecedented. There's been tremendous issues at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now this has spilled over to Jordan, where a shootout at Israel's embassy in Amman has left 2 dead amid escalating violence in Jerusalem. The thing is, at some point, when it blows, it's just going to go crazy. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu should tread more carefully in exerting control over this holy site. This photograph, showing victorious Israeli troops in Bethlehem, which they had captured from Jordan at the end of the 6-day war, was used on the front page of the paper 11 June 1967. Trump is not convinced that Russian meddling took place, his new communications chief says. Remains unconvinced that Russia interfered in last year's election, his new communications chief said on Sunday, as the White House gave mixed signals about whether it would approve new sanctions against Moscow. The president, under pressure over deepening scandal, says all agree that he has the complete power to pardon, but analysts suggest this is not the case. Anthony Scaramucci said the president believed Russian intelligence services were super confident in their deception skills and hacking and would have left no trace if they had intruded into democratic computer systems. If the Russians actually hacked this situation and spilled out those emails, you would never have seen it. You would never have had any evidence of them, Scaramucci quoted the president as saying. Take you back to the 5th of December when I wrote a piece and I was saying, quoting Don DeLillo, we have a DV-8 Tomahawk, and I said I have no doubt that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference which amplified the Trump candidacy. I was saying traditional media has been disrupted and the insurgents can broadcast live and over the top, from feeding the hothouse conspiracy online, a constant state of destabilized perception, timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks leaks, which drained Hillary's bona fides and her turnout and motivated Trump's. What we have witnessed is something remarkable and noteworthy. Putin has proven himself an information master, and his adversaries are his information victims. Donald Trump's lawyer says the president's right to pardon himself cannot be dismissed. Listen to Jay Sekulow. And then this tweet caught my attention from Jason Kander. Innocent people frequently claim the power to pardon themselves, their associates and their family members. I learned that in law school. In light of the new Washington Post scoop on Sessions' conversations with Kislyak, it's worth recalling this moment from James Comey's testimony. He obviously knew that the Attorney General was going to have to recuse himself. Anthony Scaramucci says he wants a more positive mojo as he takes over White House communications. The Wall Street Journal has found $1 billion in undisclosed loans to firms Kushner partly owns, and it's not in the revised file either. Global Macro tweets Kushner is the new Mozambique. Japan has captured more photographs of likely melted Fukushima fuel. It really is an extraordinary scenario that we have in Fukushima. International markets, take a look at this long-term chart of US Fed funds rate compared with the VIX long-term chart. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar got as high as 116.80 something. We're now at 116.60. Dollar index 93.90. You remember the key level of support of 93.65 I've spoken about for eternity. We're getting close to that, which tells me that we could have a rally in the dollar, a rebound at any time. Japanese yen 111.14, Swiss franc 0.9461, the pound 130.05, the Australian dollar is pushing higher 0.7925, India rupee 64.445, South Korean won 11.1302. That's been remarkably resilient. It's been the credit spreads which have moved out. Brazilian real, again, that's firmed, 314.11, Egyptian pound 1785.15, and even the rand, which cut rates, is at 1290.75. I think, we've got to keep a very close eye on the dollar now. Dollar yen, take a look at this. We're last trading at 111.12. The yen has traded strong of late, and we need to keep an eye on that. Euro got as high as 116.70 this morning. Highest level since January 2015. This is from JS Blockland, and we're now at 116.60. Bitcoin, take a look at this chart, and Bloomberg asks, what's next for the digital currency? I think we're all asking the same thing. Crude oil, this is WTI, now at $45.77. Rafi, who's I follow on Twitter, saying 45 to the downside, 47 to the upside for big moves. And this is another chart from Bloomberg also. We're right now at 45.70. Now, the one thing I think I've got to alert everybody to my very bearish call on oil is Venezuela. Oil watchers have been waiting for chaos. They may soon get it, says Bloomberg Gadfly. We may be about to see the first sovereign producer to unequivocally fail. The oil producer in question is Venezuela. And that assessment comes courtesy of Halima Croft, who's global head of commodity strategy at RBC Capital Markets, and formerly worked with both the Council of Foreign Relations and the CIA. In a global oil market mired in excess inventory and low expectations, Venezuela is the most tangible of wild cards. Its tragic and volatile mix of a failing oil-dependent economy, political gridlock and simmering unrest is well known at this point, but things are building to a head, partly due to the relentless logic of the bond market and partly due to the more proprietary logic of US foreign policy. Venezuelan bonds, which haven't looked rock solid for a few years, crashed last week as embattled President Maduro renewed calls to rewrite the country's constitution, which would effectively disenfranchise millions of Venezuelans who oppose him and entrench his regime. The US has warned that it may impose much tougher sanctions if Maduro goes ahead with this plan. Ostensibly, the US has good reasons not to apply massive pressure to an already weakened and volatile Venezuela. Equally, President Trump has indicated a willingness both to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and a desire to demonstrate America's freedom of operation in all things energy related. Above all, from Qatar to NATO to US-Russia relations, there are now huge question marks over how far America's commitment to the current international order extends. An oil market seemingly inoculated to geopolitics risks missing the warning signs showing up everywhere. From the palace intrigues of Saudi Arabia to the fractious streets of Venezuela, for 3 years, oil watchers have been waiting for a chaotic wave of bankruptcies in places like Texas and South Dakota to jolt the market. They've been looking in the wrong place. That's what I would often describe Zimbabwe and Venezuela's at the edge. Hunter S. Thompson described the edge as there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. Have a look at the meltdown in Venezuela's currency, which is deepening gold. Last time I looked, 1255.03. Let's go on Congo. This is a tweet from Mr. Basil Bose. It's teetering on the edge. The currency is all but collapsed. President Magufuli of Tanzania says, "I've launched an economic war," he told the crowd. This is where he threatened to close down all gold mines in the country if mining companies delayed talks with his government aimed at resolving allegations of tax evasion. The announcement by Magufuli, nicknamed the bulldozer for his forceful leadership style, marks a further escalation of a dispute with foreign companies like Acacia Mining, amongst others. He sent shockwaves through the mining community in Africa's fourth largest gold producer since his election late in 2015, with a series of actions he says are aimed at ensuring that mining companies pay a fair share of taxes. They've accused Acacia Mining of evading taxes worth billions of dollars by under-declaring export volume and the value of its minerals. The talks are yet to begin, but officials say they should start soon. And I wrote about this on the 11th of July when I said recent events in both Tanzania and South Africa's mining sectors are tipping both jurisdictions into an uninvestable and twilight zone. Relief as Kenya, Tanzania agreed to lift trade restrictions. Kenya has lifted restrictions on wheat, flour, and cooking gas imports from Tanzania, which has in turn allowed milk and cigarettes from Kenya. China goes to Africa is an interesting article in The Economist, in crisp white uniforms and standing to attention beneath a fluttering red flag with 5 golden stars. The sailors on board the People's Liberation Army ships setting sail for Djibouti on July the 11th represent a significant step for China. When they arrive, they will open the Middle Kingdom Kingdom's first military base abroad since the Korean War. It is a canny first foray. China has prepared the ground with low-key deployments of blue-helmeted troops to UN operations in places such as South Sudan, and it has placed the base in a country that is likely to cause the least offense. Very interesting piece, take a look at that. Election campaign has officially started in Angola. Parties are holding rallies and marches across the country. The president, of course, has not been well, but he's returned for the second time from Barcelona. South Africa's President Zuma will survive a no-confidence vote to top opposition lawmaker, tells Bloomberg. South African all shares up 6.93% this year. Dollar versus rand. Rand is strong at 12.90, notwithstanding a rate cut. It's recovered its losses after the surprise rate cut last week. Egyptian pound firm at just below 18, 17.8515. The hyenas and the jackals will soon be sent out of the kingdom, the First Lady Aisha Buhari wrote on Facebook on July the 10th. Politics is the survival of the fittest, and Nigeria is no exception. The hyenas and the jackals will soon be sent out of the kingdom. This is the First Lady in response to a senator who described her husband as the absent Lion King. Muhammadu Buhari has been in London being treated for a mysterious illness since May 7th. After spending a 7-week stint earlier this year, his only recent communication has been a few written statements mourning deceased politicians. Clearly a difficult situation. Nigerian all shares up 26.59% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange tops Sub-Saharan Africa at up 31.3% year to date. Very interesting piece I came across, a forgotten community, the little town in Niger, keeping the lights on in France. This is where France gets all its uranium from. From Niamey, the capital of the landlocked West African nation of Niger, we call ahead to a desert town in the remote north of the country. Journalists on their way here, it's been a while, we hear down the phone from our contact, we welcome you with open arms, but only on the pretense that you're visiting to interview migrants on their way to Algeria. If they find out you're poking your nose in their business, it's a lost cause. Good article, do read it. Top in business is the front page of Business Daily. KLM is demanding a pay freeze at Kenya Airways before it can inject fresh capital. Next up is Kenya on August the 8th. Writes The Economist. It is the commercial, diplomatic, strategic hub of East Africa, yet its post-colonial multi-party elections, held only since 1992, have been fraught. Post-election violence in 2007 left at least 1,300 dead and 700,000 displaced. The poll and the following one in 2013 are widely thought to have been flawed. This time, both Kenyans and foreigners are trying to ensure a fair contest. Procedures for ensuring cleaner elections, some using improved technology, will be on trial. If they work well, hope for fragile young democracies everywhere will be boosted. Failure, meanwhile, would be felt as a blow in Kenya and beyond. According to the IEBC, dead people don't have voter biometrics. So that should be interesting. And then we saw some recent polls. Kenyan presidential race tightens, runoff likely, pollsters say. And of course, this was the worst case scenario, really. Odinga is backed by 47% of voters, while Kenyatta is at 46%. That's InfoTrack. Separate survey by Ipsos showed Kenyatta at 47, Odinga at 43. Candidate needs 50% plus one, and support from 25 of Kenya's 47 counties to declare the winner. The outcome, this is important, will depend on voters' turnout. Which side gets more people on voting day, Tom Wolfe said. If the opposition can do that, they can flip this and they can win. The race is too close to call accurately, and avoiding a second ballot has become more difficult, Gordon said. The government's mishandling of corn shortages may boost the opposition by swinging undecided voters away from Kenyatta, which is what I was writing about that time when I was writing about the food issue. Kenyatta's chances of securing a first-round victory has dramatically fallen over the last months due to a series of scandals and missteps during the campaign. It does show that Kenyatta has not had a successful campaign. In Lamu, NASA condemned Jubilee for planning to use a dusk-to-dawn curfew to depress voter turnout and rig the election. I concluded by saying voter suppression strategies in opposition strongholds surely need to be explored by the government at this juncture. My piece over the weekend is called The Age of Disruption. I was fortunate enough to be moderating an event in Nairobi last week, co-hosted by Kepsa and UNCTAD, where the chief guest was the chairman of Alibaba, Jack Ma. I reflected on how this visit has in many ways single-handedly reset the China-Africa narrative. As I listened to Jack recount how he had raised $60,000 in 1999 to set up Alibaba in his apartment, and then reflected on the fact that today Alibaba is valued at $377 billion, I went back to Joseph Schumpeter. Schumpeter spoke of creative destruction, German schöpferische Zerstörung, sometimes known as Schumpeter's Gale, which is a concept in economics that speaks to a process of industrial mutation that incessantly revolutionizes the economic structure from within, and incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. And what is clear to me is that a new economy is emerging wherever I look, and the velocity and even violence of its emergence is plain breathtaking. Look at something like Netflix, which disrupted Blockbuster. Look at Amazon, which started by selling books and now sells just about everything. I also learned that 29% of UK retail sales are now transacted online, and the direction of travel remains online. When Jack Ma was asked about the infrastructure deficit in Kenya, he said this, turning to Bob Collymore, "But your internet is fast." And what he was saying was, look at this new information highway, because it is a disruption and an infrastructure all of its own. More importantly, Kenya has embraced the internet economy. Soon every Kenyan will own a smartphone. Mobile money is a Kenyan phenomenon. Sports pesa came out of nowhere. The ingredients for baking a high-velocity internet economy are all in place. Whether the rate cap law is reversed or not is now by the by. The digital disruption is upon us. Physical branches will increasingly be liabilities and no longer assets on the balance sheet. Millions of Kenyans will have bank accounts but never ever set foot in a bank branch. It is going to be increasingly all about algorithms and algorithmic banking and large-scale artificial intelligence. All these shopping malls, unless they are a compelling proposition, will soon look and feel like legacy assets. There is no reason why online sales could not reach the UK average of 29% within 24 months. Think about that. We should be pronouncing the last rites. Jack Ma created $377 billion of value out of nowhere. There will be entrepreneurs who will ride this new economy and who are going to create fabulous fortunes. This is that moment when you have to have your wits and antennae about you, because the risk of becoming obsolete is sky high. Vinod Khosla said the future is not seen in the rearview mirror. He was not wrong. I did an interview with the BBC Africa Business Report about how the economy has been slowing ahead of the election. Take a listen. The Nairobi All Shares up 16.47% year to date. Fresh 2017 high. NSE 20 fresh 2017 high. That's up 16.14% year to date. And if you scroll right down Rich Wrap-Ups, you'll find a link to every single share that's listed in the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Once again, thank you for stopping by.